Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. As many of us are beginning our life building journeys as young men in the United States or in the West, it's important to keep in mind all of our options and how things are trending in terms of economic conditions. And I'm putting forth this video to show you what it will maybe look like in the future in the West, or I'm going to focus on the United States here in terms of your economic buying power and your quality of life in these countries. Hopefully, I can present this data to you so you can make your own informed decisions about what you're willing to do, what you're willing to put up with, and how you think you can achieve the life that would be satisfactory for you. What I want to focus on is something called Bitcoin. And I think most people are familiar with what Bitcoin is at this point. It's a financial asset. It's also used in a number of things. Computer wise, it's a cryptocurrency. And without getting too in depth in it, because there's a bunch of people on YouTube who could explain the currency better than me, essentially it's a store of value for your wealth, and it's a way for you to keep your wealth from devaluing. Now, many of you might be skeptical of cryptocurrencies, and that's fine if you want to hold that position and you need to make these financial decisions. I'm not an advisor. You need to make these on your own and your investing decisions on your own. But in my opinion, it seems that Bitcoin has become a good store of value for a lot of people. And many people thought that Bitcoin would crash, it would go to zero, and it would eventually become worthless. And all we've seen is the opposite from this cryptocurrency as it reached another new high on today of recording this video. Let me just take a look at Bitcoin's performance over the last decade or so. You can see that all the way back in about 2016, it started back in 2012, but 2016, where it was more commonly being traded and purchased, it was in the low $100, finally making its way into the thousands range. And then as we reach the 2020s, it hits highs of even into the $60,000. It spent some time going lower, and now it's hit an all-time high as many people are looking for ways to store their wealth and find a way to combat the inflation and decreasing purchasing power that we're experiencing here in the United States as inflation overtook everything heading into the 2020s. That's its performance of all time. If we look at the last 6 months, it jumped from 66,000 to 92,000. And if we look at what experts are projecting, it's going to reach about 100,000 by the end of the year. This says by November 20th, but I think that's a little more unrealistic. I would say a little more realistic projection would be by the end of 2024, it could reach values of $100,000. There's nothing on the planet, there's no investment like this that can reach values and have you multiply your money in such a way, such as Bitcoin, as this cryptocurrency. Yes, you can invest in index funds, you can invest in real estate, and those will give you returns. And arguably something like the S&P 500 or index funds will give you more, consistent value over time. Cryptocurrency is more of uncharted territory, and there will be massive swings in value of your investments. That's just the way it goes if you want to enter cryptocurrency. But in terms of its use, if we look at something like gold, yes, gold has continued to increase in value, but gold won't even give you the same returns that cryptocurrency will. And the usefulness of something like gold over a blockchain that is Bitcoin, the obvious use of gold is continuing to go down. And so I don't see it being as a reliable or useful asset coming here into the digital future. Yes, it continues to get gains, and it might continue to do that for quite a long time. But I see something like Bitcoin as more of a value store of the future, and gold as something more of a relic of the past. Now, if you have gold, that's fine. It'll probably continue to perform well for you. But I do think Bitcoin is something of a asset of the future. If we look at the inflation of the US dollar, if we look at the purchasing power of the dollar for the consumer, we can see beginning in 1940, it steadily declined, maybe stopping that decline at some point in the 80s and 2000s when economic conditions picked up. But as we're heading into 2020, we can see that is beginning to bottom out more and more for the average American. If we look at the inflation calculator, we can see here that the cumulative rate of inflation for the dollar for the last 100 or so years is about 3,000%. Now, let's just take a year, let's say 2016. Most of us remember the year 2016 and what buying things were like. Let's calculate what it's been. It's been about 31% inflation since the year 2016. Let's look at what that was between 2000 and 2016. So it looks like here the dollar inflated by about 39%. So inflation is continuing at a massive rate. Let's go from 1980 all the way to the year 2000. What's inflation been like there? Over 109%. So some inflation is going to be just a part of economic growth for any capitalistic society and is unavoidable. But This levels of inflation is, as you can see here, continuing to devalue your purchase power as someone in the United States. So if you're looking at building yourself a life here, if you're trying to live paycheck to paycheck, hoping eventually to maybe buy a home and build a life for yourself, you need to ask yourself some serious questions about whether that's even possible where you're at in the United States. For some of you, it might be, then good job, you're on the right path. But for a lot of you, I think you may be resonating with some of the struggles that these economic challenges that we're facing today will be, and your prospects for building a life that is satisfactory. Let's look at something like housing, which is often associated with standard of living and wealth. This is Zillow tracking the housing market as an overview for the last 8 years or so when they started tracking housing prices. All the way back in July of 2016, the median house price for all the home value index was $203,000. And if we compare that to the inflation amount to where it is today, it is now $359,000. We can see that even housing is beginning to outpace the cost of the dollar and the even increasing median income for most Americans. So attaining a house is becoming more and more difficult. For example, $200,000, that's expensive, but not undoable, I think, for a lot of people if they saved consistently over a period of time, got a down payment, and were consistent on those mortgage payments. I think it's very achievable. But something like $350,000, which this is the median, if you go to most urban areas where the high paying jobs are, you're going to see $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 very easily, these housing prices. So $359,000, but like I said, in a lot of places, it's even more than that. You have to wonder, either I have to get ahead massively economically by either increasing my salary by 2, 3, 4 times, or I have to find a way to leverage my wealth in a better way and make my money work for itself. But for a lot of people, investing large amounts of money is just not doable. Your cost of living is too high, and it might not even be your fault. You're just trying to live paycheck to paycheck in an urban environment where rent is ridiculously high. You are smart with your money, but you're unable to save enough to even take advantage of things like index funds or Bitcoin because you're not able to leverage enough wealth to even make them worth it for you. And that's not your fault. That is the problem of this current economy. If we look at the median house price when compared to the median household income, this is a ratio that they calculate to determine how much more are houses than the income you're making. So you can see here all the way back in 1984, it was a 3.49 ratio. So high, but not undoable. Like if you're making average in the United States, if you're making $50,000, $55,000 and a house was $160,000, that's not bad. I feel like a lot of people would be okay with that. But if we go forward in the date, 2022, it's 5.81. The median household income is $74,000. The median house sale price in 2022, mind you, is $433,000. That's probably closer to $600,000 now. A 5.81 ratio, very, very high. And this is not something just contained to like the 2020s. It even kind of occurred in the late 2010s as well. The housing market got very, very bloated. You can see these ratios of 5.25 and ever growing and increasing. So it started maybe in the 3s and the 90s and 80s, but has grown completely out of control. So you might not even be making $74,000 a year. If you're making $50,000, $55,000 a year at a standard job and a house is $600,000, $700,000, you're talking about 10, 11 times your current income is what housing prices is. In my opinion, that's almost completely undoable for a lot of people. And that's a very stressful mortgage payment that if you ever fold on, the bank can take your house from you. So what are other options for people? If you have the money to leverage your wealth and use things like cryptocurrency, which a lot of people are resorting to, which may not be for you, but I think for someone like me and a lot of people, it may be a last financial resort to try and get ahead. You can use things like index funds and golds, which take a long time to give you the returns you need to invest in the housing market. A lot of people are looking at what cost of living is in different countries. Can we leverage our wealth in a way that makes sense, lowers our cost of living, and can we actually attain a quality of life that we like? Now, whether you want to go overseas and live in a different country is a decision completely left up to you, but is currently something I'm exploring as I came across all these problems in succession over the last year. I did the math, and although I make a decent amount of money, I have many streams of income, I even struggled to enter the housing market just at all. And I need to find a solution to this, or at least a short-term solution where I could still live my life, live a high quality of living, but do it in a way where I was still saving money and not burning all of my savings and investment money. So what people are looking at is other countries. One is Colombia. There's also Korea, which is a country I've visited many times. But I'm just taking a sort of run-of-the-mill metro area in the United States. Let's look at Houston, Texas. Not crazy expensive, not inexpensive. And what if you relocated to a place like Medellin, Colombia, which, like I said, the culture may not be for you, but I'm using this as an instance to get the ball rolling in your mind about this thought or idea, expose you to the different options out there. You can see cost of living in Medellin is 54% lower than Houston, Texas. Rent is 60% lower. Rent prices are 72% lower. Restaurant and groceries, you can see everything is lower, except your purchasing power will be less, of course, because the overall economy is just worth less in that country. But you can see the price differences here for everything on this website called Numbeo, where they do a breakdown here. And this is just a rough estimate. But let's go to rent, because that's one where people are really kind of interested in. Houston, Texas, let's say you get a 3-bedroom outside the city. Well, that's going to be about $2,200 a month there in Houston, which in the Pacific Northwest, that's like on the low end for smaller cities. That's how bad it is here. For Medellin, that's only $680 a month. And for a long time, I was unaware that these options even existed in these places, not to even mention the social benefits of living in other countries. But that is an option. There's significantly less rent in those places. What about another place that many people are exploring, which is the Philippines, which isn't a country I'm too invested in visiting, but is an option that a lot of people are satisfied with. Let's just see what that's like. So I picked another United States city, another run-of-the-mill one, Cleveland, Ohio, in the northern part of the country. Not crazy expensive, not crazy inexpensive, just kind of run-of-the-mill. You can see here that Cebu, Philippines is 50% lower. The rent is 56% lower. Rent prices are 73% lower. You can see everything. It's not that you're getting 10% by living in other countries, which to me would be negligible. Like if you're saving 10%, but I have to relocate to an entire new country, I would throw it out of the question, I think. But you're saving 70, 80, 60% on everything. This just blew my mind when I looked at these numbers. And if you could slash your cost of living by that much, somehow create a new form of income or take your income overseas, you could dramatically change your life and maybe actually reduce the amount of stress in your life. Let's look at rent. So let's go all the way down to rent per month. Apartment 3 bedrooms outside the city is $1,500 in Cleveland, Ohio. It's actually not bad in the United States. For me, I would take rent like that. But in Cebu, Philippines, $374. City center, it's $2,600, so a lot more expensive. $653. If you got a 1-bedroom in the city center, it's $1,200 in Cleveland and $454 in the Cebu, Philippines. So all I'm doing here is exposing you to what's out there, and you need to decide what choices are good for you. If your only option is remain in the United States, you're not interested in traveling to other countries, that's fine. But I think for a lot of people, they're starting to consider more elaborate or different options off the beaten path that may help them lead to a better quality of life. And so I just want to expose those to you. And my goal on this channel is to actually travel to these places over the next year and see if it's worth living there. See if it's even doable for the average American person. So that's my video. Let me know in a comment down below what you think about all this. Have you researched other countries and cost of living? And have you dabbled in cryptocurrency? I would like to hear your thoughts in a comment down below. Thank you so much for watching. Anyways, I will see you guys next time.